Hola, benvinguts tots, bienvenidos todo el mundo, welcome everyone, and thanks for being here. I'm Pau Garcia, I'm a professor from Elisava, and today I'm very glad to introduce a very dear friend, Yazmany. But first, I wanted to thank first Elisava for organizing this, and of course al Museu del Disseny, DAP, how it is called now, for giving us a home for this event. And of course, all these beautiful moments and conferences and events are not like a cause of an organization that makes them happen, but mainly because there are specific people behind it. So I wanted to thank you, specifically Marc Panero, for setting all this up, and not only this talk, but all the master talks every time, because it's a beautiful thing to have such a wonderful talent for free here in Barcelona. So I will introduce Yazmany now. Yazmany Arboleda is a Colombian-American artist whose practice focuses on building relationships across barriers using beauty and joy. He lives in New York City, where he has been working for the last years, but his practice has been actually executed all over the world, as you will see today. Some of the projects he's not going to touch on tonight include collaborating with Caroline Rubio McWright on the ice cream truck of the rights, a vehicle that shares and educates New York City immigrants and citizens about their rights while serving free ice cream. Collaborating with Brick and inhabitants of the Fort Greene neighborhood of Brooklyn to create archives of Fort Greene before its rampant and ongoing gentrification. Collaborating with the youth of Integrate New York to create a large-scale art intervention on the 65th anniversary of the desegregation of public schools in the United States, to draw our attention that actually still today there is still a segregated system. He has also collaborated with MIT, the Yale School of Management, Juilliard, the National Theatre of Kenya, the Nyoski Haven in Johannesburg, and the city of Bilbao, Spain. And he is a 5-time wedding officiant, an honor he holds very close to his heart. I personally think that Yazmany is a person that seeks joy, pleasure, and playfulness. And I think nowadays, in a moment that we are so much surrounded by darkness, by these moments of sad danger and disconnection, is very much needed. And a friend of mine, and also a professor at Elisava, Saul Baeza, said some months ago, it is too late to be pessimistic. I think Yazmany won't have this problem. In fact, for me, his work is a beautiful reminder that the importance of showing how a simple act, a simple action, simple design, a simple artifact can still make a difference, even if it's a very controlled environment in a very specific moment for just one person. Right? So without further ado, please receive Yazmany Arboleda.
Buenas noches. Good evening. My name is Yazmany Arboleda. Let's see. I have my pronouns are he, they. I'm really interested in the pronoun they because I'm really interested in transformation and change. I will tell you that I come from, when I was thinking about how to put together the story of this work, I thought about it as a sequence of questions. Who am I? What values matter to me? Where do I belong? I also thought of it as a sequence of some of the most impossible things that I've been able to do over the past 25 years of my life. When I think about my work and I think about where I come from, I think about people like Adrienne Marie Brown, who speaks to us about emergent strategy, being responsive in the world. I think about Christo and Jean-Claude, who covered the Reichstag with enormous pieces of fabric and invited us to imagine government differently. I think about Grace Lee Boggs, Luis Barragan, the mayor of Bogotá, Antanas Mocus, who transformed police officers into mimes to deal with the traffic problems in Bogotá. I think about Gabriel Garcia Marquez and magical realism. And Marsha P. Brown, one of the queer trans heroes of New York City, who really invited us to think about flowers and color and joy differently. I kind of put the sequence for this conversation as a sequence of dates and numbers and moments. I began in 1980, not the year that I was born, but the year that I was conceived. I think of my beginning not as a person, a woman, and a man. My mother, Maria Dolly Pisospina, and Leon Dario Arboleda Zapata, my dad, they met a few years before 1980, but they conceived me in that year. And in that same year, my mother took a plane from Medellin, Colombia, from the Andes Mountains, to Mexico City, and then she took a bus from Mexico City to Tijuana. And her idea was that she would bring lipstick and a top hat, and she would walk north every half an hour, and then she would sunbathe every half an hour. Eventually, about 14 and a half hours later, she would arrive in San Diego. She was pregnant with me when she walked north and made her way to that parking lot, eventually taking a flight to Boston. But my mom's idea that she was sunbathing when she was crossing borders she wasn't supposed to is where I come from. Here's a picture of my mother and my father in 1981. My mother, again, is pregnant with me. This is about 4 months before I was born. And it's important for me to tell you about my family because literally I think about my experience in the world as being entirely informed and beginning with these people. Here I am. During my first communion, when I looked at this picture recently, I remembered how hard I felt that when I did my first communion, I got a cake in the kitchen in my house. But when my sisters did their first communion, they got enormous parties that felt like huge weddings. And at the time, I was like, I don't get it. Why is it so different? Why do I get a little cake and they get these huge parties? And a huge part of my growing up in Medellin, Colombia was complicated and hard for me. The word that comes for me is abomination. As a queer little person with that face, moving around in the world, people used to say, why do you talk like a girl? Why do you move like a girl? And I always thought, well, that's just me. I don't understand what you mean. And here lies a huge part of the beginning of my trajectory, trying to ask questions about who we are, how we act, how we move, how we identify each other. And so in this Colombian context, the polarities were enormous. My Catholic, lower middle class family had very little resources to understand me becoming in the world, the way that I was acting and being in the world back then. I will tell you always that because I'm little, I'm still pretty short, I have the capacity to look up, and that to me is a huge part of why I practice humility, which is because I'm small, I can look at things and be in wonderment. Gosh, that's amazing to look up and see all of the big things that we've created as humans, all of the marvelous things that are in nature. To be able to look up continuously is a huge part of my practice. As Pau was sharing, it's a huge part of my engaging with being optimistic and trying to find a way forward in the world. Today, I identify as queer. And I think it's important for me to read this out loud to you all because I think it's a very specific definition of queer. Queer not as about who you're having sex with, that can be a dimension of it for sure, but queer as in being about the self that is at odds with everything around it and has to invent and create and find a place to speak and thrive and live, right? So that is the earth that I've been looking for since I was a little boy. I'll tell you that, apart from being an anomaly and feeling very strange in my family and in my neighborhood and in the people that I was growing up with, in 1992, a terrible thing happened. My father is assassinated by 4 men with machine guns. He's with his youngest brother. My father is one of 18 children, and so him and his youngest brother were killed at a gas station one afternoon. It was a Monday. I was at school. I think I had math class that afternoon, and that's what I was doing when bullets crossed my father's body. About a week later, that's a Monday, and on Friday, my mom's youngest brother, my mom is one of 10 children. I have 154 first cousins. I come from a very big family. By that Friday, my mom's youngest brother had been kidnapped, and by Monday, we had found him tortured to death. I'll give you a little context. In 1992, the cartels, the drug wars, there were bombs happening all over the place. I remember when I was about 10 years old going outside of the school and seeing that a bunch of bullets and bullet fighting had happened, and literally I saw somebody's brain on the back of a taxi because that's what was happening in that place. So in terms of uncertainty, in terms of trying to understand the world and why these things were happening, complicated times, right? So when my dad's killed, my mom gets a phone call that we have to hide because they want to kill her children. That's me and my two sisters. We're going to the mountains, the outside of Medellin, and we had to hide for about 2 months. My mother eventually goes to the capital, to Bogota, to get asylum, because even though her children have been born in the United States, she wasn't an American citizen. So she always tells the story that when she was on the bus on the way to Bogota, whenever the bus would stop, she imagined people were going to get on with machine guns and kill her. Just to give you, again, a sense of like the devastation that what my family was moving through and the things that were really hard to understand at the very beginning of my life. With all of that heaviness, though, we moved to the United States, to South Florida, and I wanted to share with you a language that was part of how I was able to survive this time. The words are, look around, everywhere you turn is heartache, it's everywhere that you go. You try everything you can do to escape the pain of life that you know. If you have caught on, this is from Vogue, and I want to share a video of Madonna performing at the MTV Music Awards in 1990. This video is a video that I watched all the time, and it's a video that helped me survive my childhood and make a way forward. So this is important because I spent in many rooms around the world in South Florida, and when I was moving through, trying to make a way, whenever I had a room to myself and I could play some music, I would dance to myself to figure out how to imagine what was possible and who I was becoming. I'm a superstar, and we all are, and a huge part of my practice is inviting people into the celebration of ourselves. No matter who tells you what they tell you, whatever might be said to you, the idea that we can thrive and find a way forward with our own determination of who we are is a critical part of the work that I've been doing for 20 years. This is my family in 2010, my sisters, Natalie and Clady, and my mother, Maria Doli. What you can tell in this picture maybe a little bit is that Natalie is pregnant with my nephew Escher. Another part of my practice of my family is that my mother taught us that wherever you are, you have what you need. And so here is a picker-upper and a broom, and my mother is teaching Escher, my nephew, how to walk. Again, the resources are everywhere. It depends on how you look at things. In 2000, I moved to Washington, D.C. to study architecture at one of the most meaningful cities in the United States, primarily because there's tons of museums and spaces for learning. In 2004, I come and study abroad at the Politecnico, and so it's beautiful to be back here after almost 20 years to tell the story of this work. This is a picture of me at the top of the Sagrada Familia with one of my colleagues who was studying abroad with me, Chris. And then in 2005, I moved to New York City. And in New York City, it was always my dream to move to New York. Why? Because to me, it represented a city where difference was celebrated more than anywhere else in the world, right? So giving you a little bit of the grounding of like where I come from and where this begins. I'll tell you that in New York, I met spiritually James Baldwin, who invited me to think about a bunch of things, but one of the most meaningful statements that he makes in his writing that I want to share with you today is as follows. It took many years of vomiting up all the filth I'd been taught about myself and half believed before I was able to walk on earth as though I had a right to be here. This is critical because a huge part of my life's process has been unlearning so much of what we've inherited. The ideas of what's right and wrong, what's a boy and a girl, what's black and white, and the notion of the color changing everything of the story is everything's possible. How do we name the colors of our lives? How do we own meaning? And how do we own understanding? Or how do we release from the ownership of understanding, actually? So here's my family today, or more recently, right before the pandemic, 2019. This was my other sister had another boy. His name is Lucas. And this is the day that we had a first communion for Lucas with Escher right there. It's important for me to share these pictures because I'll tell you that most of my work is based on a belief that I want to make the world a better place for these boys. so that when they ask questions and they move through the world, they understand it differently from the way that I was made to understand it. And so after 2 years of being in New York City, I am searching for ways to express ideas, and I was very privileged to meet the fashion designer Issey Miyake in Tribeca, near the office where I was working at a company called Imagination. And in conversation with Issey Miyake, who passed away a few years ago, may he rest in peace, we talked about the idea of creating an installation that would be shown in a space that was designed for Issey Miyake by Frank Gehry. And the idea was to create a series of portraits of people from New York City based on circles, circular patterns printed on circular spheres. And this is inspired really by a commercial that was made for a Sony Bravia television. And I share the commercial with you now because to me, the commercial radicalized me. It moved me towards color and towards light. And watching this over and over again with its music made me feel all kinds of things. But I said, oh my gosh, did they really throw thousands of bouncy balls on the street in San Francisco? Is that possible? What does that mean? Why? Well, they were selling televisions, but the reality is that the notion of going beyond and experimenting and playing with public space in this way was really just so compelling to me. I also thought that the way that these balls reacted to light was really specific and meaningful. And so literally I ordered 50,000 bouncy balls to my apartment in New York. And those bouncy balls became these portraits that you're looking at right now. This is the showroom that was designed by Frank Gehry for Issey Miyake in Tribeca. And it was really beautiful. It was 2007, I felt so young, and I was like, oh my gosh, I moved to New York, my first solo show, what a big deal, it's amazing. I'll tell you that some details of the work that I think are critical, because to me this is the beginning of my artwork as I know it today. Every one of these bouncy balls is numbered. It was printed by a 3-dimensional printer, and every one of the bouncy balls is in place only in tension. There's no glue or anything holding the balls in their locations. And so literally all of them are kind of floating in space, and they were pushed in one by one over a period of 8 months. We made 16 portraits. Here is a picture of young me at the party. I'll tell you that many of my friends came to the party and said, oh my gosh, it feels like Sex and the City, so fabulous. There was a line to get in the whole night. People are like, this is so special, da-da-da-da-da. Wonderful. The next morning, I felt really empty. And I felt like, what, that was it? After 8 months of doing all this work, we have an opening and it's done, and what? And literally, what I realized was that we had spent 8 months pushing bouncy balls together after work, in weekends. My friends, my family, collaborators, people I had met at the bar would come over and push bouncy balls. The labor of pushing the balls into place over 8 months was the work. This is about process. It's that we were getting to know each other, we were having meals, we were spending time together. So this is really the first time that I realized that the work is to create excuses for people to get to know each other. The work is about invitations into possibilities that are often sound impossible, but the idea is like, how do we move through that and actually reinvent who we are in relation to other people? The question that comes forward then that I think is a critical one is, what impossible things can we do together that we cannot do alone? All of my work really centers this. From that point forward, my drawings, my sculptures, every aspect of everything that I do is in relationship to someone else that is involved, not just in the idea, but in the process of making something. 2008 brings about the Armory. I go to see a show, and I see that Jenny Holster has a piece that says, use what is prominent in a culture to change it quickly. And in January of 2008, that is actually the Democratic primaries are happening, and Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama are running for president, and there's debates, and there's all kinds of discussion, but literally on the cover of the New York Times and maybe many prominent newspapers, we saw Hillary and Obama being criticized for all kinds of things. For one, Hillary Clinton was being criticized for what she wore. Can she be a good president if she doesn't know how to have fashion and style? Questionable. Obama, is he American? Is he a Muslim? All kinds of questions that kind of detract from the center of the capacity to actually lead, right? And it was important for me, like literally it was everywhere, and it was so polarized, the questions around who should be the primary candidate for the Democratic Party, that I got to thinking about all the systems of what we think of as the truth. And so in this triangle, you can see some elements that really come into play. News outlets, how do we understand the truth? Most people were in front of their computers at work and read the headlines from websites. Governments, are they telling us the truth? Art galleries, are they really legitimate? All of these systems that were around the process of what I was building and working through at that time. And so what I decided to do is to buy a bunch of websites, and not a bunch, well, yeah, a bunch of websites. And literally the Keller Gates project is born out of the idea that I could Photoshop. I created a character called Juan, who went and photographed 10 real galleries that were in Chelsea. And then I photoshopped the art that was on the walls of the walls, and I put up a bunch of really sensationalist work around Obama and Hillary. The Face of Experience, showing a picture of her completely haggard and old on purpose. The notion of her here on the left side is Hillary Clinton most likely to compromise. The idea of her being criticized for being a female. Obama's book, The Audacity of Hope, transformed into The Audacity of Black Hope. At every point, the idea was, at this moment was, guys, can people live in my paintings? Can I create realities people believe and walk into? And so we bought the website, theassassinationofhillaryclinton.com, and the website, theassassinationofbarackobama.com. We created 2 galleries, the Leah Keller Gallery and the Naomi Gates Gallery. The names were on purpose. We gave them phone numbers, and the phone numbers had voicemails, one of them being a British accent. Literally, we were borrowing from the language of legitimacy across the internet, across the way we hear and talk on the phone. And so I'm gonna share a series of videos where you can see how people interacted with these elements that were created, and how again, the work is emergent. So at every point, we're responding to it as we move through it.
You have reached the Leah Keller Gallery. We are located at 576 West 24th Street in Manhattan's Chelsea district, between 10th and 11th.
The gallery addresses were parking lots.
Our current exhibition, Yazmany Arboleda's The Assassination of Hillary Clinton, is being viewed by appointment only. To schedule a viewing, please press 1. For all other inquiries, please leave a message after the tone. Thank you.
Hello, this is Nora Poor-Sharif calling, and I would like to make an appointment to see Yazmany Arboleda's exhibit.
And I was calling to see if I could make an appointment to see the assassination of Hillary Clinton.
All of these elements that you're looking at, again, everything's photoshopped. And the idea, again, from the very beginning was, if people call these galleries and engage with the story, that means that they're believing what I'm building. Where could it go? If you had told me at the time that the New Yorker, the magazine, was gonna be the first people to call the phone numbers and leave voicemails asking to come see the shows, I would have said, that's not possible. They're not gonna believe the construction. But they did.
March 6th. Hi, this is Lauren Collins at The New Yorker. Please call me as soon as someone can. I'd love to set up an appointment for a Talk of the Town writer to come see the latest show. I'm at 212-286-5939. Again, it's Lauren Collins at The New Yorker. We're hoping to send someone this afternoon.
Hello, this is Rebecca Mead from The New Yorker. I know my colleague Lauren Collins has left a couple of messages with you this morning. I am hoping to get to your gallery this afternoon to see the show and write a piece for the magazine for next week. If you could please give me a call back, I'm at 917.
Right, so what everybody's responding to were 2 parking lots that had nothing in them. And at that point, I think to myself, gosh, nobody can come see these work for real. What do I do? I'm not sure. I told people, I sent an email to 1,500 people saying the work had been censored and no one could see it, which made more news.
Hi, this is Gilbert Vega from RCN Radio and TV of Colombia. I'm trying to get some information about the assassination of Barack Obama.
March 14th. To listen to the message, press 0.
We were on the homepage, and the front page of the El Tiempo, Colombia's most important newspaper.
I was calling to see if somebody could please give me a call back to see if there was an official statement regarding the closing of the art exhibit, The Assassination of Barack Obama.
Por su controversial contenido sobre los aspirantes presidenciales, clausuran la exhibición de un artista colombiano.
Noticias Univisión 41 a las 6.
Una exhibición con las obras de un artista de origen colombiano está causando polémica. La exposición, que se titula Los asesinatos de Hillary Clinton y Barack Obama, fue suspendida repentinamente en 2 galerías de Nueva York. Alex Roland habló con el artista y nos tiene más detalles de la controversia. Buenas tardes, adelante, Alex.
Víctor, buenas tardes. El artista firmó un contrato por un mes para exhibir esta controversial obra en 2 galerías. Sin embargo, fue exhibida tan solo una semana porque, según el artista, hubo presiones de alguien muy influyente para que las galerías cancelaran la exposición.
Hay un cuadro.
Es el autor de las obras tituladas Los asesinatos de Barack Obama y Hillary Clinton.
No es un asesinato físico, es un asesinato metafórico.
La obra enseña fotografías compuestas digitalmente de los 2 candidatos en variadas posiciones y con diferentes facciones de sus caras. Las obras estaban siendo expuestas en las galerías Naomi Gates y Lee Keller en el sector de Chelsea en Manhattan desde el 28 de febrero. Sin embargo, en forma sorpresiva, las 2 exposiciones fueron suspendidas por los centros de arte. Llamamos en varias oportunidades a los propietarios de las galerías Naomi Gates y Lee Keller, pero no obtuvimos respuesta. Sin embargo, usted puede ver parte de la obra y opinar en la página yazmany.com. Eso es todo por mi parte. Vuelvo contigo, Víctor.
Gracias, Alex.
Hasta este punto, nada existe, ¿ah? Todo ha sido construido virtualmente y si a un punto uno de los periodistas me preguntó, ¿pero es verdad? Oh, you guys, sorry, I switched to Spanish. None of the things that you're looking at are real. The journalists in all of the online media and on the TV segment, all of it is using images that are fabricated, right? I want to just make sure you all understand, I didn't have resources, so my friends volunteered to help me build these images. Everything was done with maybe less than, I don't know, $30. And so a huge part of my questioning at this point is, gosh, if we can make people believe the truth with little resources, what are organizations and institutions doing with millions of dollars to help to move us towards their truth, right? And so at that point, what happens is that Verena Dobnik, a reporter from the Associated Press, goes and tries to find the galleries, doesn't find them, and then calls the galleries and says, I can't find them, where are they? What I do is I hire 2 of my friends to play actors to play the directors of the galleries and call the journalists back. What I didn't expect was that Verena Dobnik was also going to call the Secret Service and ask, oh, these shows were shut down, what's happening? Literally, the Secret Service calls the galleries and leaves voicemails trying to find the gallery director.
March 19th. To listen to the message, press 0.
Yes, hello, this is Verena Dobnik at the Associated Press. We're trying to get some information on the closed-down exhibit. Please call us.
March 20th. To listen to the message, press 0.
Yes, hello, it's Verena Dobnik from the AP. I'm calling for Ben Rosenthal. Please give me a call back.
Yes, my name is Jeff Dahl. I'm an agent with the Secret Service in the New York field office. I'm trying to reach Benjamin Rosenthal. If you can give me a call back at the office, the phone number is 718.
I mean, here's the thing. At that point, I was like, oh my gosh, is this illegal? Am I going to get arrested? What's going to happen? No, it's super nervous because I'm like, the FBI and all these people are calling to engage with questions, and I don't really know how to respond other than to create more characters. I was very, very concerned, okay? And so what happens next is that I really have no way of thinking about how we move it forward except to make the artworks that were photoshopped in the images and bring them to life, to have an exhibition of the art that was censored. And so we spent 2 months building the very big, enormous penis, the black penis that was called Once You Go Barack. We literally made it, and the invitation to the exhibition that was gonna open and celebrate the censored artwork was a stop-motion video of the very large black big penis moving all over New York City with people being horrified. I have very good friends. I could not do this work if it wasn't for the people who show up to support me in these ways, as crazy as that might be. Let me see. all kinds of enormous locations so that we could really compare and talk about scale.
Yazmany, it's Catherine. I just got a call from the police that there's some kind of assassination poster on the store and the landlord is livid. You cannot do that. It's against the law. I thought you were doing art portraying the political campaign, nothing about assassination or any of that stuff, because the building will be closed down and we will be arrested. So please call us.
Hi, this is Sewell Chan calling from the New York Times. I'm trying to reach a representative of the Naomi Gates Gallery.
Hi, my name is Kate Taylor. I'm calling from the New York Sun.
Hi, this is Corky from Moscow calling from the New York Daily News.
Yes, this is Cynthia Fagan from the New York Post calling.
And I work at ABC News. I'm wondering if we might be able to speak about the entire crazy ordeal.
Eyewitness News at 5.
Also, a controversial art exhibit. So controversial, the Secret Service was called in to question the artist.
And I'm Phil Lipoff in Midtown. Is it art or is it a threat against Senators Clinton and Obama? It is written under that paper. We will show it to you. You judge for yourself.
You're watching Fox 5 News at 10. What New Yorkers watch.
Now, have you heard about this? It is political and provocative.
A new art exhibit titled The Assassinations of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama.
We sent Fox 5's Lisa Evers to check it out.
A New York artist got in hot water with the cops and the Secret Service over a word he used on this exhibition window. But what's behind the doors could cause him even more trouble. Fox 5 got a sneak peek.
A controversial art exhibit that is both political and provocative has been opened in Midtown Manhattan, where the presidential candidates are the focus of a controversial art exhibit up in New York.
Dicen que la tercera va a la vencida y esto le aplica a un artista de origen colombiano que ha estado al centro de una controversia en Nueva York.
One New York artist definitely has an interesting way of expressing his thoughts.
Political and provocative, a new art exhibit promoting the assassination of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama.
Complicated because never was I promoting their assassination. I was criticizing and inviting folks to ask questions around the media, around how we talk about who we are and who's leading us. And also, I think it's important for you all to know that through this process, I never named for anyone that my father had been assassinated and that my family experience and where I come from was very tied to the question of this word. And so when I think about the journey of experimentation and of being iterative, for me, an artist should be experimenting and proposing and questioning, and it's not defined. There's elements of risk, there's elements of the unknown, and if those are not a part of the process, to me, it lacks artistry. I think it is a part of how we think about these things. Many people thought of me as a fame-seeking assassination artist, and there was all kinds of write-ups about the project. Nothing really touched the complexity of the questions we were asking, and nobody really understood the project in its entirety in the way that I'm explaining it to you today. So much so that many of my friends, the day that I was brought in by the FBI, wrote me asking, hey, did you hire actors to play police officers? Did you hire actors to play the FBI? Because nobody really understood what was truth and what was fiction. So this was a time before Kellyanne Conway said to the world that there were alternative facts. This was a time before fake news, as we know it today, the proliferation of news, as with the internet and social media, the polarization of ideas continues. And so, I believe that in 2016, there was a study that showed that fake news was more popular and more seen than actual news because of the way that our systems are built. Capitalism is the devil. What is the color of the truth? In my work, I often get folks to be in circles. I make drawings. I think of the drawings as operational documents. I also speak about budgets being moral documents that tell us what we think is important. And so across all of my work, I always make sketches of the ideas we come up with together. And from there, I say, does it look like this? Does it feel like this? And if that's true, then do we need how many balloons? And how many people? In which plaza? This idea for this project really begins when I began thinking about Monday blues. I moved to India, and I think about the fact that in Japan and many other places around the world, people get depressed when they have to go back to work. In Japan, there's a cartoon they play on Sunday nights called Sasaesa, and there's a thing called Sasaesa syndrome. When the cartoon plays, people get depressed because they remember they have to go back to work the next day. In the West, it's called Monday Blues. And I thought, gosh, what if we gave away balloons when people have to go back to work and help them shift how they think about having to go back to that cycle of life? And so when we did it, these are all biodegradable balloons. When we did it in India, it was in Bangalore. We did it in the heart of the city, where there's an enormous bus station where people get off to go and walk to work. And I was working with young artists and activists in the south of India. For me, as Pau said in the introduction, every opportunity to have a conversation and to engage meaningfully with one person is enough. And so, again, every balloon is an excuse to say hello, to engage in how somebody's doing in their morning and what they do with their life. Here you can see our uniforms, which were just simple t-shirts with the iconography of a balloon and the word work inside, which made people in India think that we were having a job fair, that we were promoting jobs. But in fact, we weren't. We're just saying, good morning, this is for you. But why? This is for you. I think of my work as people coming together to transform their experience of the world through co-creation. Now more than ever, I really invite folks to participate in crafting ideas and moving through them together. The balloons showed up all over the place. Eventually, I was invited to do the same project in Japan, in Yamaguchi. And when it happens in Japan, what's special about that is that it happens 2 months after the tsunami strikes the part of near Tokyo. And the displaced artists are moved to the north, which is where we give away the balloons. Most of the balloons in Japan, the 10,000 of them, were given by displaced artists. And then eventually we do it in Nairobi, in Kenya. This is what it looked like then. In every city, it's a different color on purpose. We find the meaning of that color together. One of the things that happens before we give away the balloons in Nairobi is that El Shabaab throws a grenade into a restaurant and makes an explosion that kills 3 people. People are really afraid to go to public space, and the young people that I was working with, culture producers, artists, activists, talk about the idea of giving away the balloons on purpose to people who, in spite of their fear, go about their lives and go to work and bring their children to school. Again, the smiles never get old because having interactions with people who don't expect to be surprised by color is really a gorgeous process. Eventually, Nabila Alibai, a diplomat and cultural producer who was working in Afghanistan, writes me an email, and 2 months later I show up, and we begin the process of trying to create Monday Morning in Kabul, a place that is a war zone. To me, super compelling, because so often what you hear about Afghanistan is the decades and decades of war that the country has had to deal with. And in my mind, I kept thinking, gosh, if there's people there who are creating culture and are building stories, how do we center those stories and those people instead of the Taliban and their fear-mongering and all the horrifying things that are often in the news? It's important for me to name that as somebody who was born in the United States but who grew up in Colombia and has lived in many places, when we think about the American intervention in Afghanistan and what it has led to, there's enormous challenges to really understand and comprehend the need of the presence of the United States in that space. To me, being open to the questions and going there to learn was an essential part of my growing and my evolving in my understanding to my relationships with the people who I'm related to there now. When I got to Afghanistan, people told me that there was no way Monday Morning was going to happen there because first, there were rarely any public spaces that were used, that were active. Really, there were so many barricades and just like ways of building security across that city that people didn't think it was possible. And people also said, oh, there's no women in public space. The only women that are in public space are begging for money, and they're wearing burqas because they don't want to be seen. And so I thought to myself, gosh, if that's true, like a huge part of the reason why we should do this is to really honor women who don't have space, public space, to be active in and to engage with their communities. These are some of the sketches of the possible installation as we were imagining it. What happens at that point also is the idea that really, if we're going to do this, it shouldn't be supported and funded by a particular organization. It should be funded by lots of people. And the idea was, what if we get folks to donate $1 for every balloon we're going to give away so that there's a kind of interaction? And here is a video that shows the way we told the story of bringing balloons to Afghanistan.
Last year, our governments spent more than $1 trillion on war.
We spent the year giving away thousands of balloons to people on their way to work during Monday morning commutes.
Bright orange spreading throughout the streets of Bangalore, India.
Residents of Yamaguchi, Japan, flowing in a sea of green.
And in November, the streets of Nairobi, Kenya, bubbled over with dots of yellow distributed by dancers, musicians, and other artists.
Each city becomes a fluid living sculpture comprised of people going about their Monday morning routines, balloons in hand.
The workplace flooded with bright bolts of color, creating an urban fabric never before seen.
Now, with your help, we will give away 10,000 pink balloons to the people of Afghanistan.
Working in partnership with various Afghan organizations, we will paint Kabul a playful shade of pink
and envelop the citizens of the world's fifth fastest growing city in an atmosphere of humanity and hope.
Do you believe that we are all connected?
Do you believe in balloons?
To support Monday Morning Kabul, visit webelieveinballoons.com and simply buy one balloon for $1. No more, no less.
One pink biodegradable balloon will be given to a citizen of Kabul this coming spring on your behalf.
Your participation will be documented in a digital mural where your smile will join that of thousands of others taking part in this project at webelieveinballoons.com.
The project website that serves as a community building tool connecting all contributors and the recipients of individual balloons in Kabul.
$1.
One balloon.
One world.
10,000 chances to brighten someone's morning.
We believe that there is charm everywhere,
even in the darkest of places.
We believe that beauty is a wise weapon.
We believe in balloons.
The idea of believing, right? Like, we believe in balloons. It's such an abstraction. And for me, from the very beginning, the idea that the balloons were hollow and shiny things was also a critical part of what we were doing. What is an exchange? What is a hello? How do we think about how we engage with one another? I will tell you that when I was in Afghanistan, in Kabul, one morning I had a big camera because I was trying to understand and photograph public spaces, and literally somebody looked at me and said, "American spy." And immediately police officers went, a bunch of people started swarming around me, and police officers put me in a car and took me to a precinct where it took 12 hours for them to get me out through the commissioner of culture, who eventually figured out I didn't speak Farsi or Pashto. But the question of who's allowed to take pictures and where. So often we make assumptions in our public spaces that anyone can get to do anything. And when you're in a place like Afghanistan, in Kabul, where there's so much fear and there's so much security, the question of security becomes something that impedes the way we move through our understanding of ourselves. One of my favorite things about the project in Kabul was that we got Tolo TV, the national television station, to play a commercial that we made with young people carrying pink balloons towards Kabul. And they played this commercial once an hour, every hour, for the entire week before the actual installation happened. I love the fact that it has Nina Simone, one of my favorite musicians and music makers in the world, as part. The afternoon before the installation happened on May 23rd, 2013, the Taliban has 3 different operations in which there's explosions that happen in the capital. One of those explosions happens at IOM, one of the United Nations compounds where a dear friend of mine lived. Literally, were the 12 youth leaders that I was collaborating with to make the project, the house we were inhabiting, we could hear the bullets and the bombs outside of the house. And people assumed all over the city that the project wasn't going to happen because naturally people were afraid and nobody was going to be there. The youth started calling everybody on their phone saying, hey, we need this tomorrow. Color in our city, we own it. It's not the Taliban's, it's ours. And literally, it was beautiful to watch it happen because the youth took over and owned the project, because I was very afraid of what could happen.
Not preparations for a birthday party, but certainly a celebration. More than 100 residents of Kabul come together to impart a bit of color and hope to their dusty capital.
We want to show the people of Afghanistan that if we can give away 10,000 pink balloons to Afghanistan, we are going to give away 10,000 opportunities to bring happiness in somebody's morning.
But of course, there's more to it than just brightening someone's day.
I'm holding this because I want peace for Afghanistan.
Each balloon is sponsored by somebody, somewhere, for a few rand, and carries a message of peace.
We have one person that smiles, or we have one person who questions what this is about, we have succeeded. If we use our imaginations, if we use creativity, there are possibilities for us to build a better future together.
And this New York-based artist truly does believe in what the balloons stand for. He's already unleashed similar explosions of color in India, Japan, and Kenya.
News that moves. ENCA.com.
So as you heard Sarlash, one of the youth leaders, speak about the work, it was everywhere, because again, it was surprising. You could give away 10,000 pink balloons in Kabul while the war was happening, in the middle of explosions and bombs and horrifying things happening to folks. I'll tell you, the most surprising thing that happened the morning after the installation occurred was that on the homepage of the Taliban said, "We declare war against pink balloons." Okay? Was it a balloon show or a miniskirt show? Author Kari Habib wrote on a Taliban website. The West is using different techniques to promote their culture in Afghanistan. Sometimes they do it in an undercover way. Taliban declares war on pink balloons. The extremists criticized an art project in Kabul in which 10,000 balloons were given away, accusing the West of coming up with the event to smuggle in its culture. Taliban says the distribution of 10,000 balloons highlights youth creativity, aims to break culture of hijab. I want to just repeat that sentence. Taliban says distribution of 10,000 pink balloons to highlight youth creativity aims to break culture of hijab. How do we understand each other when we think about frameworks like this, where creativity and self-expression is thought of as a kind of evil or something that's bad for us, right? In 2013, President Karzai invited us to the presidential palace to give a press conference in which we announced we were going to be giving away 10,000 pink balloons in Kabul. In 2021, that same room was used by the Taliban to announce they had taken over Kabul in Afghanistan. It's been now almost 3 years. The new regime in Kabul started imposing even stricter rules on women in the final weeks of 2022, with a pair of heavy-handed rulings, banning them from studying in universities and working for NGOs. Beware of Color, later that year in Johannesburg, I was invited by artists and activists there to engage in questions around housing. What I learned when I went to Johannesburg that summer was that there were tons of buildings that were dilapidated, that were falling apart. I learned that there were many buildings that were beautiful and useful, but that were empty because after apartheid, the white people who owned those buildings had moved away. The question then became, what do we do with those buildings? What do we do with the reality that people need a place to live and work? If we have these spaces, I mean, here are some photographs that show you what some of the living conditions were. This summer alone, we had people die in a fire. More than 70 people died in a fire in a building that didn't have water or electricity. Most of the people inhabiting these buildings in the central business district were immigrants without papers. And so the question of the living conditions and the rights of people to live and exist in a place. The project became Beware of Color, where we made buildings look like they were crying color, literally pink. We called the color Josie Pink, And the idea is that we would make the paint come from windows and ceilings, literally making a visual that would make the buildings look like a pipe had broken and it was a paint company and something was happening that was very, very strange. But across the city, people began writing about this and saying, why is this happening? Eventually, what folks realized, it was a collective of artists, including myself, and we were really calling out the need to transform these buildings into places that could be inhabited by people. Often the work is about making color a weapon, a way of folks not being able to deny the realities that we're moving through and the challenges that we're facing. Again, dealing with devastation and horror in different places of the world, my friends in Kenya called and said, my gosh, there's an enormous challenge because CNN has just announced that Obama, the American president, is going to be visiting a hotbed of terror. Yes, there've been tons of issues and challenges. Al-Shabaab not only did that grenade when I was working earlier, a couple of years earlier there, but many of the attack on Westgate Mall where more than 60 people were killed. Divisions among Christians and Muslims were flaring up in all kinds of ways. And so people were really upset. And so we started having conversations. What should we do? How do we create explosions of color that talk about our love, our care for each other, despite the fact that we have different beliefs between our religions? And the idea became coloring faith. The color optimistic yellow. The idea to paint houses of worship, mosques, temples, churches, the same color, to make them sculptures in the landscape that speak to our equal humanity. And again, I made a bunch of drawings, and I said, does it look like this? Is it this one, and this one, and this one? And literally, the idea was, yeah, let's make this happen. It took about 3 years to actually move it forward. And I'll tell you, with every one of these projects, the work is critical. I work in collaboration with people, with others, and I think of those others as being essential. Here's Nabila Alibi, who brought me to Afghanistan in her hometown of Nairobi, a very proud Muslim, Wekeza Zablon, Rajay Shah, and Ramadan Obiero. It was important for me to find collaborators who could speak and lead in Nairobi. I don't have black skin. I don't speak Swahili very well. Speak a little bit, but not good. And being able to find folks who are on the ground who can translate ideas and mobilize people is essential. Across all of the projects, it's about stakeholders. Who should be here? How do we think of the journalists who should join the project so they can see the evolution of our process? How do we find the funders? In this case, we needed a paint company to agree to volunteer and give us all the gallons and gallons of yellow paint for a low amount of money or for free. We found both. And then really thinking through all the different elements of community organizing. Is it about meeting with the heads of interfaith organizations, or is it about showing up and going to the churches and the mosques and presenting to the communities? We found that it was about going to church and mosque and temple and talking to people, just like I am tonight, sharing, being like, is this what we want to do? How do we do it? Is this important? How do we make this statement? Always really believing that other people have enormous value and that they could shift and change the work. At one point, a couple of Muslim scholars asked the question, where in the Quran does it say that yellow is the color of God? This is a critical question because to me, this is what the work is about. The Quran doesn't say that yellow is the color of God, but do you not see the sunflowers? Do you see the bumblebees? There's clearly so many gifts from the universe that have this color. How do we honor it so that we can move towards a place where we honor each other fully without limitation? In my work, I also work with a lot of language. I think language shapes our reality. And finding prompts, finding interesting ways of inviting people to think. Where does your faith live, right? When I answered this question somewhere on there, I said that my faith lives in the laughter of the people I love. And again, the poetry of finding ways of inviting folks to think differently. Here is a time lapse that shows one of the mosques that was painted with school children and all kinds of folks from a community in the coast right next to Mombasa. Another church, another mosque. To date, we've painted 18 buildings. Again, from the very beginning, in my opinion. And then I'm gonna show you a video of one of the moments of painting these buildings together in Kikambala. This was one of the last locations where we have done the project. And I just think, I know you've all come to hear me speak, but the reason I share these videos and these voices is because so much of my work depends on other people. And so when you hear these people, these are the people that made the project possible.
I want to be honest. This color is very wonderful. It is shouting, means we have to shout for peace. Have to shout for peace. It is shining. Everybody passing is saying, wow, because it is shouting and shining. That means as we have united together, we shall also shine concerning peace and unity.
It shines everywhere. You can see it from very far.
Yellow is the color of the sun. As in the morning, when the sun rises, it is always yellow. So this color indicates that there is a new dawn coming. Peaceful.
How do you feel about the color yellow?
I feel so proud. This yellow is good because it's making light.
Of course, unity is power. One person cannot make it in life. And concerning the color shouting, it means I also have to shine to the world. I have to shine to the community, my behavior, my character.
So when you see yellow, a full building painted yellow, number one, it clicks in the mind. Oh, there's a yellow building somewhere. You understand? And when you walk, you see a church yellow. When you walk, you see a mosque yellow at the same neighborhood. It shows like a sign of there's some togetherness.
They would get curious and they would be asking questions. Why is it painted yellow? Because really, it's not the color that you ordinarily see in houses of worship. Imagining if they bother to ask, then that would be the beginning of a conversation that would help them to understand why it's yellow, the significance of this color in this context, and why people then decided to do this painting this way, and the whole significance of color in paint. And I think that is important because then it will keep the conversation going beyond these 3 days.
Yes, because now from here, what I can make a step, what I have not been doing, I'll start doing it. If I have not been being in good relationship with the other person, maybe they have wronged me, I'll start changing. This color has been changing.
Here's some of the final images of the project. This is I'm about to share with you the last piece of work that I'm the most proud of in my life, which is my work in New York City. In 1977, Merle Euclides Lederman showed up at the Department of Sanitation, and she shook the hand of more than 800 sanitation workers, people dealing with garbage in our city, and she looked into their eyes, and she said, "Thank you so much for making our city possible." Merle has been the artist in residence for the Department of Sanitation from 1977 until today. 10 years ago, she transformed 10 of our garbage trucks into mirrored garbage trucks so that people in New York could see themselves in their garbage. In 2015, the commissioner, Tom Finkelpearl, created the Public Artist in Residence in the city of New York. The idea that artists would be inserted into each of the city agencies to transform those agencies. And I was hired in 2020 to become the first artist to be the artist in residence for the Civic Engagement Commission. When I showed up on August 3rd, I realized very quickly that the way that we're telling the story of the Civic Engagement Commission, which was a new agency dedicated to building trust in our democracy, looked like this. And immediately I was like, nobody here cares about the fonts, the colors, or the photographs we're using to tell the story of who we are, which is an enormous problem. Quality communicates dignity. Literally, the work was to make the Civic Engagement Commission agency a famous agency so that everybody could collaborate with them in every aspect of their work. One of the main projects of the agency is participatory budgeting for the entire city. And I will tell you, enormously problematic that it's called participatory budgeting. This is where we live. Our agency can thrive with knowing all the histories of all these artists and the work we've been able to move through. Naming names, transforming the agency into the People's Commission, naming the participatory budgeting project the People's Money, really centering that. Thinking about how do we really create a brand that is inclusive and thoughtful and playful. All the elements that I was sharing, how do we center people? How do we talk about the earth, which is where our city is located on earth? How do we center that? And how do we center the heart, emotion, care in the process? Here's a logo that was sketched that was one of the original concepts for what could be possible. Some ideas for murals, centering the idea of care over and over again. Eventually what we got to was, an idea was, how do we meet people where they are? Let's take a bus and literally move towards where people are and have conversations. The idea was that we were gonna take a vehicle, what became a corrections bus from Rikers Island. I couldn't have imagined that they were gonna really give me a corrections bus, but they really did. When we showed that it could be covered in plants and there could be all kinds of ways of expressing it. I'll tell you, Rikers Island is important because it's a place where many people have died because the conditions are so terrible. It's right outside the city. This was the buzz we received, number 336B. The question, what is the color of justice? Making democracy like honey, sticky and sweet. How do we transform a corrections buzz into something that's beautiful, that centers healing? Does it look like this or like this? When many of our theaters were closed during the pandemic, we didn't have any place to go see theater. Could we have had mobile theaters that operate in public space? We invited people to decide what the bus should become, teaching them how to use ranked choice voting. This is what it looked like when we were moving through space. And then this is a commercial that we created to tell the story of the agency.
Have you heard about NYC's Civic Engagement Commission?
In 2018, New Yorkers voted in a citywide election to establish the CEC.
The only city agency with the mandate to build trust in our democracy.
And this summer,
your commission is kicking into high gear.
The CEC,
its first ever artist in residence, Yazmany Arboleda,
and the Department of Cultural Affairs
are inviting all New Yorkers.
That's right. Every single New Yorker.
To help transform a retired prison bus into a beautiful community center on wheels.
That will visit the neighborhoods hardest hit by COVID-19.
A nuestras comunidades más afectadas por COVID-19.
In each borough,
Queens,
Staten Island,
Manhattan,
Brooklyn,
the Bronx,
bringing resources,
education,
belleza,
and joy.
We could all use some beauty and joy right now.
To get involved, visit participate.nyc.gov.
Welcome aboard.
We took that bus and we invited folks to tell us what it should look like. We created a mural made of 8.8 million recycled beads that went on the ceiling of the bus. The ceiling of the bus had gold beading where there had been markings by the people who had been imprisoned during its 12 years on Rikers Island, honoring the history of trauma of the bus, because I strongly believe that you cannot build a healthy future unless you look at all the trauma that has been created by the systems we've all grown within.
And a local art festival is spreading a message of positivity. The People's Festival celebrated the resilience of New Yorkers through art yesterday. Fordham Plaza was the last stop for the festival.
You can see it. I'm going to move forward a little bit. This year, we turned the money monster, the bus into the People's Money Monster, Tippy. And it's a large-scale puppet that teaches New Yorkers about participatory budgeting. That's our Commissioner of Culture, Lori Kumbo, talking about one of the most exciting moments. We had more than 210,000 people participate in voting for how we should use $5 million in the city of New York. Here is Secret New York.
This giant puppet traveling across New York City is a
Talking about that
former
bus.
corrections bus. Dressed up as Tippy the Tender People's Money Monster, this bus is teaching New Yorkers about participatory budgeting and how to use the city's money on projects that actually matter. The bus used to transport detained people on Rikers Island until 2021 and has now been given new life, transformed into a traveling community center called the People's Bus. The interior of the bus is made of 8.8 million recycled beads. Head to our link to find out where the bus is going to be next and how you can get more involved in your community.
This year, we also rebranded the Civic Engagement Commission. This is the new logo honoring artists like Keith Haring, who died of HIV/AIDS in New York City in a construct, in a government that could not take care of him. When I think about, again, the practice of looking into the future, we cannot look into the future unless we look at the past and see all the harm that's happened, all the things that have hurt us, that have harmed us, and created limitations for so many of us. And so when I think about the future, I think about artists as being chief transformation officers. The world is changing. Everything around us is changing. How do we activate change in every practice of our lives? Within government, within cultural institutions, within academia, all the different spaces that need to be changing because everything is shifting. How do we address and engage with that change in a way that's responsible? I'll leave you with the words of Octavia Butler, one of my favorite futurists. All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. What impossible things can we do together that we cannot do apart? Thank you. Are there any questions?
Hola.
Hola.
Thank you for the talk. I'm going through a small project, and I don't know what's the most difficult thing for you when you're approaching a new community or any kind of like group of people where you're kind of like the foreigner or the stranger, but how do you approach it even?
You know, as you can see, like the way that I am, and so often what I do when I'm meeting new people is kind of prepare something that makes people feel like I'm showing up with gratitude and with an open heart. And that often means that that you create materials or a way of thinking, like I've thought about showing up. What do you prepare for people? How do you show up and create an invitation that feels interesting, a little strange, but definitely with texture? That to me tells people that there's an investment and that there should be an investment in return.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm very curious, how did traditional media, especially Fox News and CNN, reacted to the assassination of Hillary and Barack? Did you notice the bias of both of them? I imagine some having fun with it, others were super worried about it.
You know, there's bias in every aspect of the news in the way we know it today. And so I think more than ever when I think about what's happening in the environment of news outlets, specifically what's happening with the wars across the world, with all the different things that are going on, there's bias everywhere. And I think it's important to understand, gosh, what are they trying to frame and for who? So much of the history of media, in my opinion, is about protecting people who own land. And that's really what's at the heart of the work. And so capitalism and understanding systems of capitalism becomes a critical aspect of understanding perspectives and whether somebody has a sense of humor about it or not. I think in general, journalists are very serious and take themselves very seriously. And when Sol Chan from the New York Times called me to say, is this real? I said, well, can you see it? and he said, no, but can I walk in? I was like, well, have you tried? What is that back and forth? And how are you playful in that process? So.
Hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to thank you for doing the work in Afghanistan, because I think Afghans are, one of the most underrated people, and nobody really talk about what they're going through. Also, it's not really a question, but also another fact that you mentioned that women are banned to go to university. Only, I think 2 weeks ago, they were banned from proceeding education past 6th grade. So the girls who just finished their 6th grade exams are not going back to school. in Afghanistan, and I think that's really upsetting. I mean, I come from Iran, and I was looking at your work, and it was so upsetting that everything that you showed cannot be done in my country, and hopefully like one day, but I doubt it. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Yeah, there's enormous limitations all over the earth, and so much of it is based on ideas of belief. How do we believe?
Thank you so much for the talk. I was so impressed when watching the project in Kenya with the churches, and even with the People's Bus, that there was such a true universality of understanding the mission. And I'm trying to understand how you're able to do that, where people, I feel like as we watched the participants in Kenya, they were almost poetic about it, where they related with it in their own personal way. How do you approach that process so that you can have that spirit?
You know, a huge part of my practice comes from improvisation and from theater work, which is about showing up and being really playful. When I get people in circles, we really like do all kinds of things, and that kind of wobbly, human, saucy strangeness, even when I haven't been able to speak the language, I'm able to communicate an open heart. And I think people lean in. And when you model it for people, they show up and do the same thing. And so there's something about being in process and questioning, and really the other part of the work that I think is really essential is that my drawings come from people's ideas, not from me. And so being able to be like, is this what you mean? There's a kind of dignity building and an honoring that shows up in being able to look at someone in the eyes, of being able to laugh together. I mean, I'll tell you this, during the Kikambala time, one of the women looked at me and she said, you walk a little bit like a girl. And I said, you know, I do. I like it. And it's a little bit of like being that playful. And even though it hurt my feelings a little bit, showing up with that humility of being able to be like, you know, yeah, sure. And what is that? And why is that? Why do we have to name that? So.
Hi, I want to ask you, how did you translate this kind of virality into something long-lasting, like benefits, that benefits your career?
Well, when people ask me about the impact of my work, I will tell you that I haven't figured out all the formal metrics of what it means to, like all the projects that I've created, but I will tell you this. The most essential part of what I do is that I make people come together and then somehow they become friends. And those friendships often last a very long time. In every one of the projects you have seen today, you have people who have shown up and collaborated and have become friends. Even if they don't talk to me anymore, they're friends with each other. So that's how I think about the impact of the work. Thank you so much. I think it's been an honor. What a privilege to be here with you tonight.